Well, a teenager from Limpopo is appearing in court in connection with bullying at school. Now, this incident is believed to have led to another pupil committing suicide. That's Lufuna Mabunga. According to police, the arrested child will be dealt with in accordance with the Child Justice Act. Well, the question we're asking is, what type of punishment or rehabilitation is there for a child who's been bullying another? Let's find out now from Zita Nefale. She's from the Center for Child Law at the University of Pretoria. Zita, good morning. Help us navigate this. So in this case where we have a child who has now been arrested for assault, that incident possibly having led to the death of another child, where do you even begin? How do you investigate something like this?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Well, usually what happens in the processes involved in the child justice courts, probation officers who are social workers that work in the criminal justice system are asked to come in and investigate circumstances. So investigate the circumstances of the child accused in this case, investigate what was going on, background, investigate circumstances of the crime. So what was happening in the child's life at that point. And the probation officer then writes up a report where he or she sets out the findings and recommendations, including recommendations of what should happen if the child is found guilty of assault. So this could include diversion services, referral to programs run by the Department of Social Development, possibly referral to a child and youth care center. And this then assessment report is made available to the Child Justice Court that will then carry out its own review of the circumstances, background, and any other information that is necessary to make an appropriate decision that is that covers the sort of crime that has been committed, as well as looks at the circumstances of the accused child in the case.
So in this case where this teenager has been arrested for assault and where subsequently the victim in this case has gone on to take her own life, whether, we obviously the investigations will show whether that was the reason that she actually did it, and in fact, indeed, it is ruled suicide. If this teenager is found guilty of that, what will she actually be found guilty of? Will it be found guilty of assault? Will this now be linked, if it's found that it was suicide, will it be linked to the other teenager's death? What exactly would happen? I understand we may not have had many cases like this in South Africa, but what could we possibly guess as to what might happen here?
Exactly. So like you said, investigations will have to be carried out. So usually what happens when a court has to make a decision about the crime that has been committed, the prosecutor who is tasked with prosecuting that case is going to look at all of the evidence that is put before him or her and make a decision as to what charges should be made against an accused. So it could be assault. Police officers who make the investigations may or may not link the case to the unfortunate death of Lufuna. I cannot make any final comments on this, but it like you say, it is dependent on the circumstances, on the investigation that occurs. But at this point, the commentary is that there's a possibility of assault, but this all hangs on the prosecutor who has been tasked with managing the case.
And let's talk about afterwards then, Zita, in terms of, does this teenager end up going to jail? Is there perhaps another facility where we send a young woman like this? Is there rehabilitation, restorative justice? What exactly happens here? What would be the best thing in a case like this? Because let's bear in mind, we also have to look at what has happened in the alleged perpetrator's life as well, to make her act in the way she did.
Exactly, and I agree with you completely there. First and foremost, we must be looking at why does the child act in this way? Is there anything in family circumstances, community circumstances, something that is causing a young person to act in this way? And this is where you have the probation officer now really carrying out a thorough investigation. And then in terms of what happens after, the Child Justice Act then links to the Children's Act that talks about different programs that are made available. So let's say a decision is made to divert the child away from the criminal justice system and is linked to programs provided by the department that may provide intervention in the child's life, that may provide rehabilitation services for whatever is happening in the child's life and with the child herself. Sometimes cases are so severe that the courts decide that it is necessary to detain a child or a person for a period of time. And then children are sent to what we call secure care centers. So these are not prisons run by Department of Correctional Services, but these are centers where children who are convicted of crime are sentenced for a period of time. So then they will be detained in those centers. And while they're detained in those centers, they will still be receiving some sort of services and support from social workers and any other professionals that need to provide them with the relevant support necessary. So there are various options to look at based on the crime that was committed and as well as the circumstances of the accused as well and also the impact on the victim.
Zita, what, if anything, does the Child Justice Act say about bullying? Does it have bullying in its text? And if not, is it time to change that, especially when it comes to charging a child? Because this is, you know, it really is becoming a really big problem for us.
Well, remember that bullying so let me start here. The Child Justice Act doesn't say anything specifically about bullying, but remember that the act of bullying is assault in itself. It can be considered as assault, and this is what the Child Justice Act deals with: assault, criminal acts. But at the same time, we need to remember that we have the Schools Act as well. So the process of the Child Justice Act and the process of the Schools Act can run at the same time. And the Schools Act then will deal with issues around bullying. So the Schools Act then provides for issues of the code of conduct. So a school is going to have a code of conduct that talks about bullying and that talks about disciplinary procedures that must occur when bullying incidences have been reported and what must happen after those disciplinary procedures. So we have two different pieces of legislation dealing with different things, and they can run at those processes for those legislation can run at the same time.
All right, thanks very much for that, Zita Nefale, just explaining to us in terms of what could happen to the teenager who's now been arrested. It is a case that we haven't really had to deal with before, or not too many of them, so we certainly all will be watching this one.